Cribbage, or crib, is a card game traditionally for 2 players, but commonly played with 3, 4 or more, that involves playing and grouping cards in combinations which gain points. Cribbage has several distinctive features: the cribbage board used for scorekeeping, the eponymous crib or box, 2 distinct scoring stages and a unique scoring system including points for groups of cards that total 15. History: according to John Aubrey, cribbage was created by the English poet Sir John Suckling in the early 17th century, as a derivation of the game noddy. While noddy has disappeared, crib has survived, virtually unchanged, as one of the most popular games in the English-speaking world. The objective of the game is to be the first player to score a target number of points, typically 61 or 121. Points are scored for card combinations that add up to 15, and for pairs, triples, quadruples, runs, and flushes. Cribbage holds a special place among American submariners, serving as an official pastime. The wardroom of the oldest active submarine in the United States Pacific Fleet carries the personal cribbage board of World War II submarine commander and Medal of Honor recipient Rear Admiral Dick O'Can on board, and upon the boat's decommissioning the board is transferred to the next oldest boat. Rules: play proceeds through a succession of hands, each hand consisting of a deal, the play, and the show. At any time during any of these stages, if a player reaches the target score, play ends immediately with that player being the winner of the game. This can even happen during the deal, since the dealer can score if a jack is cut as the starter. The deal equals, the player's cut for first deal, and the person who cuts the lowest card deals. The dealer shuffles and deals 5 or 6 cards to each player, depending on the number of players. For 2 players, each is dealt 6 cards. For 3 or 4 players, each is dealt 5 cards. In the case of 3 players, a single card is dealt face down in the center of the table to start the crib. Once the cards have been dealt, each player chooses 4 cards to retain, then discards the other 1 or 2 face down to form the crib, which will be used later by the dealer. At this point, each player's hand and the crib will contain exactly 4 cards. The player on the dealer's left cuts the deck and the dealer reveals the top card, called the starter, or the cut. If this card is a jack, the dealer scores 2 points for his heels. The play equals, starting with the player on the dealer's left, each player in turn lays 1 card face up on the table in front of him or her, stating the counter euro that is, the cumulative value of the cards that have been laid a euro without the totals going above 31. Players score points during this process for causing the count to reach exactly 15, for runs and for pairs. 3 or 4 of a kind are counted as multiple pairs, 3 of a kind is the same as 3 different pairs, or 6 points, and 4 of a kind is 6 different kinds of pairs, or 12 points. If a player cannot play without going over 31, he calls go, at which point the other player, continue the play until no one can play without the count going over 31. A player is obligated to play a card unless there is no card in their hand that can be played without the total going over 31. Once 31 is reached or once no one is able to play any more cards, the player who played the last card scores 1 point if the count is still under 31 and 2 if it is exactly 31. The count is then reset to 0 and those players with cards remaining repeat the process starting with the player to the left of the player who played the last card. When no player has any cards, the game proceeds to the show. Players choose the order in which to lay their cards in order to maximize their scores. Experienced players refer to this as either good or poor pegging, or pegsmanship. If one player reaches the target, the game ends immediately and that player wins. When the scores are level during a game, the players' pegs will be side by side, and it is thought that this gave rise to the phrase level pegging. The show equals, once the play is complete, each player in turn, starting with the player on the left of the dealer, displays his hand on the table and scores points based on its content in conjunction with the starter card. Points are scored for combinations of cards totaling 15, runs, pairs, a flush and having a jack of the same suit as the starter card. A 4-card flush scores 4 and cannot include the cut or starter. A 5-card flush scores 5. the dealer scores his hand last and then turns the cards in the crib face up. These cards are then scored by the dealer as an additional hand, also in conjunction with the starter card. Unlike the dealer's own hand, the crib cannot score a 4-card flush, but it can score a 5-card flush with the starter. All scores from 0 to 29 are possible, with the exception of 19, 25, 26 and 27. Players may refer colloquially to a hand scoring 0 points as having a score of 19. Muggins. Muggins is a commonly used but optional rule that must be announced before gameplay begins. If the opposing player fails to claim his full score on any turn, the opponent may call out Muggins, and peg any points overlooked by the other player. Match. A match consists of more than one game, often an odd number. The match points are scored on the cribbage board using the holes reserved for match points. On a spiral board, these are often at the bottom of the board in a line with 5 or 7 holes. On a conventional board, they are often in the middle of the board or at the top or bottom. In a 2-player game of cribbage, a player scores 1 match point for winning a game. Their opponent will start as dealer in the next game. If a player skunks their opponent, that player wins 2 match points for that game. If a player double skunks their opponent, they score 4 match points for the game. If a player triple skunks their opponent, they automatically win the match. Double and triple skunks are not included in the official rules of cribbage play and are optional. There are several different formats for scoring match points. Cribbage board. Visually, cribbage is known for its scoring board, a series of holes on which the score is tallied with pegs. Scores can be kept on a piece of paper, but a cribbage board is almost always used, since scoring occurs throughout the game, not just at the conclusion of hands as in most other card games. Points are registered as having been scored by pegging along the crib board. 2 pegs are used in a leapfrog fashion, so that if a player loses track during the count, 1 peg still marks the previous score. Some boards have a game counter with many additional holes for use with a 3rd peg to count the games won by each side. There are several designs of crib board. The classic design is a flat wooden board approximately 250 300 mm by 70 80 mm and 10 20 mm deep. There are 2 sets of 60 holes divided into 5-point sections, see picture above. A pegging out hole in the middle at each end allows the board to be used in either direction. One player or team scores on one set of 60 holes and the other player or team scores on the second set. Different arrangements are made for 3-player games. A relatively old design is that of an equilateral triangle with 2 rows of 40 holes on each side. These boards did not generally include extra pegging out holes or holes to count games. A newer design has 3 or 4 rows of 120 holes in a paperclip shape and is often brightly colored. It is best suited to games played to 121, though it can also be used for 61-point games. A tournament long board is used in sanctioned tournaments in the American Cribbage Congress and consists of 4 rows of 60 pegs, no number markings or 5-point segments, and only a mark indicating the skunk line. Movement around the board starts on the outside and ends on the inside. Players start and end in the same hole. Another common variation is based on features of the highest scoring cribbage hand. The board takes the form of the number 29, with the pegging rows following the contour of the numbers 2 and 9. The design can sometimes include a background image of 3 5s and a jack, with the 4th 5 offs to the perfect hand giving that score. The count being 8 combinations of 15 for 16 points, 6 pairs of 2 for 12 points and a matching knobs jack for 1 totaling 29. Each of the 4 30-point divisions of the cribbage board is colloquially called a street. Being at 15 points would be on 1st Street, being at 59 points would be on 2nd Street, etc. Strategies. Throwing your hand equals. There are certain cards and card combinations that are likely to be beneficial to a hand. They include pairs, runs and face value combinations totaling 15. Players will try to keep these cards, non-dealers discarding to the crib cards deemed least likely to improve their hand after the cut, while the dealer retains the best cards while throwing combinations that will likely maximize points in the crib. Particularly useful cards, whether for the hand or crib, include fives. Even though fives are most commonly held in the hand, they are also good in the crib. 4 out of every 13 cards are worth 10, so there is a good chance that fives in the hand or crib will form 15 deuce. 2 card combinations of 5. The same principle as fives applies, with a good possibility of forming runs. 6s, 7s, 8s and 9s. Combinations of these cards produce 15 twos and runs. Hands totaling 12, 16, 20, 21 and 24 are often composed of these cards. 4s, 5s and 6s. These total 15 and simultaneously form a run. Hands totaling 12, 16, 21, 23 and 24 are often composed of these cards. 7s and aces and 4s and 7s. These combine to make 15s, commonly scoring 8, and occasionally scoring 20. 3s, 6s and 9s. These also are likely to combine to make 15s, and can score similarly to the 7s and aces. Flushes. Flushes, because of their dog-from-every-town nature, frequently contain interesting 15 twos and runs, plus their count as a flush. Jacks. When holding a face card whose denomination does not matter, hold a jack for its possibility of scoring knobs. Consecutive cards. Especially when throwing to one's own crib, consecutive cards have the chance to meet the starter or the opponent's discards to form a run. Statistically, the 2 cards that will score, on average, the most points in any crib are a pair of 5s, then a 2 and a 3, then a jack and a 5. Statistically, the 2 cards that will score the lowest points, on average, are the king and the 10. Throwing defensively to the crib equals, often a player is confronted with a conundrum: you have good cards to hold but must throw to your opponent cards that are likely to score significantly in his crib. If you are dealt a hand composed of 10-10-8-7-6-2, your best opportunity to score points is to hold the 8-7-6-2, 15-4 and a run of 3 makes 7. More importantly, this hand can be cut to 10, 11, 12, 14 or 16. But to what extent does throwing a pair of 10s mitigate the usefulness of holding the deuce? By throwing a 10 deuce, the likelihood your opponent will score significantly in the crib is reduced, while your hand's possibilities still range from 5 to 12. The opponent's largest possible crib, your having thrown a 10-2, is 14, whereas throwing a pair of 10s offers the maximal possibility of 22. 10, 10, 5, 5, 5. The answer to this lies in a player's position on the board. Is this the beginning of the game, and is the player willing to chance a loss for a hoped-for big gain? Are you so comfortably ahead that your opponent's crib won't hurt you? Or are you behind so significantly late in the game that you need holes at any cost? These questions, along with personality and perhaps feelings of luck good or bad, influence how best to throw a challenging hand. Here are some shortcut rules on what to throw, or not throw into the crib. Avoid breaking up a chance for a 4 to 6 double run. Avoid breaking up a run of 3. Avoid breaking up a flush. Avoid throwing a 5 or J into the opposition crib. Avoid throwing consecutive cards into the OC. Avoid throwing a pair into the OC. Avoid throwing 2 of the same suit into the OC. Avoid throwing a or into the OC. The play equals. Some of these tactics will only work in a 2-player game. The pawn, the player who leads the play, should consider the following: initiate play with a 3 or a 4. The opponent cannot make 15 on the next card played. If the opponent completes a pair, the smart player has planned an offensive rejoinder such as 15 for 2, for example, having led a 4 while holding a 7, or playing trips. Play a card from a pair. If an opponent completes the pair for 2, the first player can complete a pair royal for 6. Lead from one of 2 cards totaling 5. A 10 card is a likely response, and allows you to easily score 15 for 2. Also, as the dealer, holding 2 cards totaling 11 increases the chance of making 31 for 2. If holding two cards that total 15, such as a 6 and a 9, play the 6. If the opponent makes 15 for 2 with a 9, the first player can play 24 for 2 with a 9. If holding a 7 and a 9, or an 8 and a 9, be careful about leading them. While it is common that the opponent will play for the 15, thus giving the pawn a run of 3 with the 9, it is also common that the dealer's response is for a run of 4. For example, pawn leads a 7, dealer responds 15 for 2 with an 8. Pawn plays to 24 for 3 with a 9, but dealer responds 30 for 4 with a 6, gets a go and ends the series with his ace at 31 for 2. More often than not, the dealer wins this exchange. In general, do not lead a 5 except in an unusual and tactical situation. It is likely the opponent has a 10 or face card and can easily make 15 for 2 points. If you have a choice between a 15-2 or pairing, make the 15. This prevents your opponent from scoring a possible 3 of a kind. An exception to this strategy is if you can make a 4 of a kind. Holding small cards increases the likelihood of getting 15 for 2 as well as 31 for 2, and often provides an opportunity to play successive cards after getting a go to form a pair or a run. Avoid making the count 21. There are 16 cards euro 30.8% of the deck euro with a value of 10, so making the count 21 gives an opponent an easy chance for 31 for 2. Equals home to deal equals. Much strategy in cribbage derives from the fact that the first hand counted is the non-dealer's. The dealer may be only 2 holes from winning and the opponent 20, but if the pawn holds a 3-3-4-5 hand and has cut a 5, the dealer who pegs only a go will lose. Players use this knowledge to decide when to throw their hands aggressively or defensively. The standard cribbage board is laid out in streets, where players move up the outside and down the inside. Each street comprises 30 holes, and it is universally acknowledged that a good cribbage player getting average hands and pegging intelligently will score about 25 points in one pair of turns, that is, as dealer and as pawn. Working backward from the end game, it can be seen that when a player deals what should be his final deal of the game, he wants to lie around the corner about 6 pegs on 4th Street, necessitating 25 holes in the final 3 hands. Being thus positioned, the dealer is said to be home to deal, and will play judiciously, scoring only the points needed without allowing the opponent to take over the better position on the board. Players who deal short, however, often play more aggressively in an attempt to recoup points sufficient to re-establish the better board position. See also, card game, cribbage statistics, cribbage solitaire and cribbage square solitaire, 2 solitaire card games based on cribbage, cross-cribe, a board game in which players try to form intersecting cribbage hands on a 5x5 grid, King's Cribbage, a game with cribbage hands being constructed crossword style, pub games, cribbage square solitaire, American Cribbage Congress, sanctioning body for cribbage clubs and tournaments. References. Scarn, John. Scarn on-card games. Dover Publications. ISBN 0-486-43603-9. Wergin, Joe. Win at Cribbage. Oldcastle Books. ISBN 0-948353-97-X. Bibliography, Scarn, John. Cribbage. Scarn on-card games. Dover Publications, pages 395 euro 404. ISBN 0-486-43603-9. Retrieved January 18, 2009. Wergin, Joe. Win at Cribbage. Oldcastle Books. ISBN 0-948353-97-X. External links, Cribbage Corner, Cribbage Strategy from Cribbage Corner. American Cribbage Congress, Cribbage Forum, Cribbage Guide at Learn Play Win, Daily Cribbage Hand.